I had a kind of an odd start to my week this week. For me, kind of normally, I feel pretty good most days. I wake up, physically I feel pretty good. Emotionally, most days I feel pretty good. And for me, it's been very fortunate because most of my life wasn't like that. Most of my life, I didn't feel very good physically. We won't even get into my emotional issues, sort of thing. But, I feel really fortunate that at this point in my life, like, those things are far better than they've ever been. I'm not perfect. I got my issues, but as I've gotten older, it's gotten better. But then it was interesting. On Tuesday morning, I woke up, and Tuesday morning wasn't anything like that. I actually woke up about 4 in the morning. My back was hurting. I didn't feel very good. Couldn't go back to sleep. Finally dragged out of bed. Man, back hurts, my shoulder hurts, my knee hurts, I got a headache. And, usually I'm pretty excited about the day, and I wasn't really excited about the day. I was kind of feeling down, having a tough time getting motivated. And I'm like, man, what's going on? And I started thinking about, what is happening? Why do I feel so bad today? And then I started thinking about the days leading up to Tuesday. Now, Bonnie and I had kind of an unusually busy weekend. In fact, we've kind of been really busy the past few weeks, but this past weekend was really kind of busy. And so normally for me, exercise is a really big part of my life. But then I started thinking, I'm like, man, I haven't done my cardio consistently in weeks. And then for me, I eat a really specific way. I'm one of those crazy guys that eats 5 times a day, really specific food. 4 of my meals are exactly the same every single day. My wife will vouch for that. And so I've always eaten that way, and I started thinking about the weekend. And the weekend itself was really busy. We started running around on Friday, and my normal day off is Monday. And so running around on Friday, stuff through the weekend, into Monday. And I thought about the food I'd eaten over those 4 days. So on Friday night, we were out running around, so I got some fried chicken fingers and some big baked potato with far too much butter on it. And then since I couldn't eat all my fried chicken fingers, I ate those again on Saturday night. And on Saturday night, I had ice cream, and I had cookies. And then Sundays, was kind of a wind down day for me. We finished up here, work out afterwards, and then I kind of wind down. So we had hamburgers on the grill with rolls and potato chips and another piece of cake. And then we were out running around on Monday, and it's like, hey, we haven't gone out to breakfast in a long time. So I had a great big breakfast, and then we kind of missed lunch. We had this kind of too big of dinner. And then it occurred to me, Tuesday morning was no mystery at all. That the reason that I feel much better now than I used to is I take much better care of myself now. And what I have found, although it makes sense that the way you eat affects you physically, I find that the way I eat actually affects me emotionally, that I feel better emotionally when I eat better. I feel better emotionally when I work out. And I have lots of other rhythms. I've got time with God. Journaling is a big part of what I like to do, just kind of process my thoughts. And so what I've done over these years, and I would say with God's guidance and lots of people's help, is I've actually put together kind of these building blocks that have been big parts of how I live every day. Because the thing I discovered is that I used to think that the way to a good, healthy life were these kind of great big moments in time where you make these great big changes that are going to fix everything. Has anyone ever found that to be the case? No, it's the little things you do every day after day, that seem like they're boring, but that predictability creates health, creates physical health, and it creates emotional health. And for me, Tuesday morning was a reminder of that. Now, this idea that it's the little things that we do each day that really matter, because it's the little things that we do each day that actually build our life. That idea obviously is not original with me. That has been around a very long time. You go back to, ancient philosophers talk about it, and the Bible talks about it. In fact, the Apostle Paul says this about the issue, and he wrote this about 2,000 years ago. All athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away. But we do it for an eternal prize. So I run with purpose in every step. I am not just shadow boxing. So he's drawing a parallel between what athletes do and how we live life. That what he's saying to us is that for us, life is showtime. Life is the game. But it's not a game. It's serious. But we have to show up in life every day on game day, as if it's game day. That the time we have in this life is the time that we use to live our life, to do the thing that we're meant to do. But we're kind of doing this kind of two things at one time. We live our lives in an attempt to find our purpose in life, but also what we do every day is living out our purpose, whether we decide to or not. We're doing something, and there's going to be a result. And so we spend every day, whether we think about it or not, walking towards some ultimate purpose. May not be the one you want, may not even be the one that you're meant for, but there's going to be some result of our life. That's what we go through. And finding our actual purpose and finding a healthy lifestyle, a fulfilling lifestyle, an impactful lifestyle is not going to happen by accident. We have to do each day with intentionality. And the point that he makes here is that we've got to start to think more like an athlete. Right? An athlete has to use every day well. Right? An athlete has to eat well. They have to sleep well. They've got to practice. Right? They've got to use all their time well because they're looking forward to game day. I mean, Tom Brady plays into his 40s because he eats a really certain way. He takes care of himself, and he stays in the league a lot longer because he actually looks forward to game day. But we don't have that same luxury because every day is game day. When we talk about life, every day is game day. That's why Paul makes the point that he's not shadowboxing. He doesn't look at every day as practice. He says, as I go out today, there are things that I have to do. So I'm not just practicing. I'm going to live my life now. I'm not just looking for what I'm going to do in the future. I'm trying to live a full and complete life because our life is now. So what that means then is that everything we do every day is part of actually living our lives. And we can forget that sometimes as we choose to waste time or maybe not make the best use of time. And I don't mean that leisure is bad. I don't mean that leisure is bad. That's not my intent. I'm just simply saying that we want to choose our actions well, realizing that every step we take is part of living our lives. Every interaction we have is all part of living our lives. And although we may live a long time, 80 years, 90 years, 100 years, the reality is we only get one shot at this life. And we don't want to look at that with panic. We want to look at that with purpose. That if we only get one shot at this life, then we want to choose to live it well, to aim to be our best, to choose to do our best. What that means then is that we need to live our life on purpose. Because I think sometimes that doesn't happen. Because although our life is not a practice run, life is something that takes practice to do well. And that's why we have more wisdom when we get older, because we've had practice. And we saw a lot of things that didn't work. In my case, I saw a whole lot of things in my life that didn't work. But then you start to evaluate that experience. And when we think about this idea of experience, people often say you learn from experience. What I've heard said is that, well, you don't always learn from experience, but you do learn from evaluated experience. That as you go through things, as you look at what happens in your life, going, well, that didn't go the way I wanted it to. What should I do differently? So what we need to do as we live our lives, and this is the challenge, is that as we live our lives, we want to make the most of the day, living it out, but still recognize that every day is also practice for living more effectively in the future. But what that means then is that the way we live our lives, if we think of our lives as walking down a path, as we walk down the path that's our life, at the same time, we're constantly trying to find the path because we don't know what the path is supposed to be. We're trying to figure it out as we go. But wherever we find ourselves, we want to do the best in that moment that we can. But that's hard to do. Because if we don't live our life on purpose, what happens? Our life gets lived for us. Our life starts to drive us. And if our life drives us, rather than us driving our lives, it can run us over. And next thing you know, you're living a life that kind of crushes your soul. In fact, in this first part here, don't crush your soul. That's what I want us to think about. Now, this idea of crushing our soul, it comes from this idea that if we don't live lives that fulfill us, if we don't live lives that seem purposeful to us, then we start to feel empty. We start to feel unfulfilled, and that is soul crushing. Now, this phrase of don't crush your soul, it actually comes from a very unlikely source. It actually comes from Keanu Reeves, the actor Keanu Reeves. Now, if you know Keanu Reeves, you know that when he was a young actor, he was in the tabloids a great deal for partying pretty hard and so forth. And then somewhere along the way that stopped. And now Keanu Reeves is roughly my age, he's in his 50s. And he has a very different reputation now. He's physically in fantastic shape. He's more successful as a businessman than he's ever been, as an actor than he's ever been. But he's also notoriously looked up to. He's considered to be an incredibly nice guy, incredibly generous, has literally given away millions of dollars, tried to do it on the slide, but people always end up talking about it. There's even a case where he was riding one of his classic motorcycles, gets hit by a car, wrecks his bike, knocks his teeth out. And he's there going, it's fine, it's okay, it'll be all right. Because that seems to have been his nature. And so someone asked him in an interview, and they said, how can you be like this? How can you be so emotionally healthy? How can you be so physically healthy, particularly as you're getting older? You're doing all these action movies. How does that work? And he starts out by saying something like, he tries to kind of minimize it. He says, well, it's the same thing, right? Diet and exercise, get enough sleep. In other words, the basics matter. But then he pauses. And he kind of contemplates what he's going to say. And then he makes this key statement. And try and do things that don't crush your soul. And I think that what we find in life is that as life starts to push us along and starts to take us wherever it will, rather than us deciding what we're going to do, life decides for us. And when life continually decides for us what we're going to do, that's when we end up feeling crushed, lost, and empty. Now, the reality is that none of us can truly control our lives. The big things in our lives, we can't really control. We lose people we love. We get sick. Sometimes jobs go away. Those sort of things, we can't control the big things. But what can we do? Well, what we can do is incorporate behaviors into our lives that enrich our souls, that fill our hearts, that strengthen us. Because what happens is that as we do that, as we take on these daily practices to give us better emotional health and better physical health, when those hard things happen, we have the tools to get through them. We have the tools to survive them. But if we wait until the hard things happen to start trying to do it, it's going to be a lot harder to deal with. So we want to be ready. And we want to choose a lifestyle, even though we can't always know the path to take. We want to choose a lifestyle where we go into the right direction more often than we go in the wrong direction. And if we do that, I am confident that if we do that, if we go in the right direction more often than we go in the wrong direction, we will end up where we're supposed to be. But what I have observed happen is that very few of us ever have a chance to do that or ever take the chance to do that, to actually say, I want to live my life well. I'm going to make choices. I'm going to bring choices into my life that empower me, that give me options. Because what I often see happen is life starts to look kind of like this. Is that, I wake up in the morning, and if you're still working, I got to go to work, or maybe if you're retired, you start thinking a lot about your finances or other responsibilities. And I sit there at work, and if you're me, you work way too much. And so you're working, or you're thinking about finances, or you're trying to deal with those issues, and you're stressing about all that stuff. And then one moment it pops into your head. Oh man, I have a home life. I got family stuff. I should really be home. So in my case, I'm going to leave work early today so I can go spend time with my wife. But then when I go home, what do I start thinking about? Oh man, I should be at work. I got all that work stuff to do. So I go back to work and I go, oh man, I should be home with my family. I should be doing family stuff. There's someone I should be caring for. And I start bouncing back and forth, and I do that till it exhausts me. And then one moment I come along and say, well, geez, I have a pretty good life. I should start volunteering more. So now I'm already overloaded with work. I'm already overloaded with family stuff, but good people volunteer. I'm going to volunteer. And I sign up for too much stuff. But I still have all that work stuff and family stuff. So what happens? I bail on the volunteering stuff because I just can't fit it in my schedule anymore. So I've made a commitment that I can't keep. And I'm back to bouncing back and forth about work stuff and family stuff. And I go, hey, you know what? I'm so overloaded. What I need is to do things I enjoy. I need more leisure time. So I take some time off. And I start going, wow, I got all that work stuff I should be doing. I got all that family stuff I should be doing. Oh, and there's that volunteer gig I bailed on. And I don't relax when I try to do the things I enjoy. And then it pops into your head at some moment, I say I'm a Christian. Shouldn't I be doing something with God? Shouldn't I be doing that too? And then life becomes just bouncing around these little bumpers like we're a pinball machine, beat up and bruised up. Because life is deciding for us where we go and what we do, as opposed to us deciding how we're going to live our lives and allocating out our time. And before long, our lives get filled up with feelings and emotions and activities that make us feel like our souls are being crushed. And the thing that starts to happen is that even things that might be good things or things we enjoy, they start to get out of balance with the rest of our lives. And before long, what we find our lives becoming is we get up and we go do something that we don't really like doing, but we kind of have to do it now. And we feel bad and we feel empty. So we go home and we then do something that helps us forget how bad we feel, whatever that vice of choice might be. And then we get up tomorrow morning and we go do something we don't really like anymore. And we get through the day knowing at the end of the day that vice will help me forget how I feel. It's still there. I spent a year of my life that way. In my 20s, I got a job that anyone would have wanted. Well, not anyone. I clearly didn't want it. I thought I did. And I hated every day of that job. I hated every day of that job. And I kept saying that people would want this job. I should want this job. I hated that job. And I finally had to quit. I finally took a pay cut to do something else because I just couldn't stand it anymore. But so often, when we do things like that, the rhythm of that keeps pushing us along. And that's going to crush our souls. So the only way to have that not happen is to make an explicit choice to prevent the cycle from happening. And that's what we want to look at throughout this series. Throughout this series, each week, I want to just give us a couple of tools that we can use to help kind of take control of the cycle in our lives. Because there is hope. It can get better. And the beauty is that it doesn't come from tectonic change. It doesn't come from just blowing your life up. It comes from choosing a few small habits, making them a priority, and then doing them with regularity. That is really what moves us along. So now, if the goal in our life is to walk the path we're meant to, and understanding that we will never be able to see very far down the path, but we want to keep walking down the path that we're meant to, that seems kind of impossible to do. I mean, how can I ever know what the path is supposed to be? I mean, I don't have foresight. I can't see the future. I can try to make reasonable judgments, but I can't know. But is there someone who does know? God tells us, God promises us that He will help us find that path. Through the writer of Proverbs, God says this, "For the Lord grants wisdom. From His mouth come knowledge and understanding. Then you will understand what is right, just, and fair, and you will find the right way to go." So according to the writer of Proverbs, those hard questions, those things like, every day is game day, but it's also practice. How am I supposed to live? How am I to decide where to go? How am I to decide what I'm supposed to do? How am I supposed to find my purpose? Well, according to the writer of Proverbs, God wants to tell us. In fact, God will tell us, is what he says. So how do we tap into that? How do we deal with that? If life looks like this, if life is this kind of constant, overwhelming idea of bouncing us around from bumper to bumper, driving us through life, the first thing we have to do is say, I'm not going to live that way anymore. I want to sweep that away. I'm not going to let that be my life anymore. And what we need to do is choose to introduce some order into our lives. We need to be deliberate. We need to be intentional. So each week I'm going to kind of add a block to a diagram. But the starting point for the block is we've got to establish a solid footing. We've got to establish our relationship with God. If we prioritize our relationship with God, we'll start to see things change. But in order for that to happen, we have to understand that it is a relationship. You know, depending on how you grew up, you may have seen God running around after you with a baseball bat, trying to smack you down every time you make a mistake. You may have seen God as someone who's just looking for all of the errors you make in life. He's going to punish you for those. You may have seen him as disconnected and uninterested, depending on how you grew up. But what we see from the scriptures is that's not God. God wants to be in relationship with you. But God will not force that relationship on us. So we have to choose to be in that relationship. And again, recognize that it's a relationship. What does a relationship look like? If Bonnie and I were married, but we never spoke to each other, never saw each other, never did anything together, you might call that a marriage, but you certainly wouldn't call it a relationship. A relationship means that we talk to each other, that we listen to each other, that we spend time together. And that's what God calls us to do, that if we will embrace that relationship, he says that he will tell us where to go. He will tell us what to do. He will show us that way forward. Now, this is not news to any of us. I think we all know that we should seek a relationship with God, but we also know that what that looks like is kind of hard. You know, and over the time I've been here, I've talked about, various study techniques of reading this way and, kind of journaling and that kind of stuff. But I understand that life is busy. So this week, as I was kind of putting this together, I was thinking about how could I give you something where if you just had 5 or 10 minutes every day, that you could take that 5 or 10 minutes to focus on relationship with God. Just grab 5 or 10 minutes. And it turns out that there actually is something that will do that. Because thankfully, we live in a time of technology. So I'm going to show you an app here called the Youversion Bible App. The Youversion Bible App is a 100% free app. Okay, you don't have to buy it. You don't have to pay things for it. There's no subscriptions. It is totally a free app. It's actually a service provided by one of the larger churches in Oklahoma. And they fund this thing entirely on their own. You get to that by going to Bible.com. About as easy as it can get. Bible.com. It'll work on your desktop or your laptop if that's all you have. But if you have a smartphone, it has some kind of additional features like notifications and so forth. So I'm going to just kind of walk you through quickly because I want to really, really encourage you that if you have a smartphone, put this on your phone. If you don't have a smartphone, just take your browser and go to Bible.com. But basically, if you go to Bible.com, it will actually let you install the app on your phone. Right? So to install the app, super easy. If you're on Android, you'll see a little picture of a Bible in the bottom right-hand corner. Tap on that, it'll walk you through installing it. If you're on iPhone, you'll see a banner that says download. Tap on that, it'll walk you through it. But once you install that, you now get kind of this whole application that will do simple things that you might expect, like a verse of the day. There are Bible videos. If you're into that series, The Chosen, the entire first season is inside the app. Right? All that stuff is there. But it has a number of features, including, if you see it on here at the bottom, it says read. That gives you access to literally almost 70 different English translations of the Bible for free. And so whatever you're looking for is there. So if you choose that, it takes you into the Bible. And then from there, it's a Bible, right? So right now it's on John chapter 1. If you want to change that, tap on that. Pick the book and the chapter. You're right there. Also, if you look on the top right there, you see it looks like a speaker. I tried this earlier. Let's see how this goes. If I do this.
The book of John, chapter 1.
Can you get it?
Prologue. Christ, the eternal Word.
It will literally read the Bible to you. So if you're in your car and you go, I'm too busy to read my Bible, turn it on. If your car has Bluetooth, it'll play through your car speakers. But then also, you can change your Bible version easily. Like I like the New Living Translation. I find that to be a really easy translation to read. But if you don't like that, tap on that. And again, there are 67 English translations available. Right? So I like the New Living Translation. There's also the NIV, which is a super popular translation. But in my research, I found another one I found interesting. It's called the Easy to Read version. It's actually a translation of the Bible intended for people who are deaf. It actually follows the phrasings used in sign language in there. So that's the kind of things that are in there. Widely known translations as well as more specialized translations. And if you speak Swahili, there's one of those too, by the way. So they have, I think, hundreds of languages in there. And the cool thing is that if you like a translation, you choose it, boom, it flips to that translation instantly. So if you want to compare translations, understand the translations, all that kind of stuff is there. But here's another big part of that 5 or 10 minutes a day thing. At the bottom, next one more click. At the bottom it has plans. This is a key thing, reading plans, is that if you go to the reading plans, there's a whole list of reading plans in here. Choose a reading plan, and like this one's about Ruth. And it will walk you through day by day with devotional text and Bible scriptures. Most of these require just 5 or 10 minutes a day. And just like the Bible, scriptures can be read to you, these devotionals can be read to you as well. And it will go through day by day for you. It will give you a reminder to do it. So with tools like this, stepping into that relationship become so easy, and it's so important. When we think about relationships, it's important to talk and to listen. But so often in our relationship with God, we do a lot more talking than listening. Right? We often run to God with prayers, and we should run to God with prayers, and we ask Him for His guidance, and we ask Him what we should do in a situation. But if we don't engage with the Scriptures, how are we going to hear from Him? I mean, God speaks to us in many different ways, but one of the primary ways He speaks to us is through the Bible. If you would just take 5 or 10 minutes a day, pick a plan. There are thousands of reading plans in here. You can start them on whatever day you want. It will walk you through day by day. And there's a lot of different people bring these together, a lot of different viewpoints, and there's a lot of stuff in there. And what I have found is that willingness to maybe go through a simple plan like this that is maybe from an author or a viewpoint I don't normally think in terms of, I start to see new things. I just start to see God move in richer ways. So I really, really want to encourage you to do this. Again, even if you don't have a smartphone, all these features that I've mentioned, if you just go to Bible.com, all the features will work on your desktop and laptop as well. So if you don't have an existing habit or rhythm of engaging with the Bible, this kind of takes all the excuses away. The Youversion Bible App, right? Bible.com. Give it a go. Just give it a try. I will tell you that my life changed dramatically when daily engagement with the Word of God became part of what I do. And so I want to encourage you to do the same thing.